Good morning.
That there was a weird thing there where you dropped, and
Just for a split second, it was in the subs. If
Yay!
anyone got it, it just said the ding dong who's going to swing in, and I laugh.
Oh no, not even though I bully you.
But it's fixed. We fixed it, I think. You're welcome, Astro Rookie.
We did. We totally fixed it. I still don't know what it is, but we fixed it. Just like an elder millennial, I'll also take credit for it. So
Yes.
Fair. I'm just going to start with the fact that it is, and I know Zool, you're stateside, and I know things get a little hotter over there, which I know I can respect.
Mm-hmm.
But it's too damn hot here. Like it's just too hot. I can't handle it, and I'm so sick and tired of being that person in work who's like, I hate the sun, I hate the heat, I hate the summer. I don't like this. I'm not comfortable. I'm gonna go home and sit in my dark living room and play PlayStation in the dark with 2 fans on me. Like I walked for 18 minutes today, and I don't know anybody. Nobody's here for this, but you're getting it anyway. I was so damp. There's no other word for it. I was just damp. I was the dew on the moss on a log near a lakeside, damp.
That is quite vivid. I personally love the sun. And so I also think it's annoying that we're doing this. It's for the opposite reason. I want to be outside playing. I want to be out in the sun playing long games. It's nice and chilly. And now, I will admit, it's hot enough not to want to put on the shirt and tie and jacket. So I've swapped for a more summery looking shirt. But oh boy, what a lovely day. Bright skies, a little bit of heat. You just gotta, I think clothing is a big part here. I wear loosey goosey, air rated. I'm good to go. But yes, that's. I did not walk for 18 minutes.
I think I've decided. I realize now, and I know you now 3 years.
Oh, I'd say if not 4. It'd be crazy if it's maybe 3. Yeah.
Oh, I think. I was just saying more intimately. I meant to say more personally.
Well, yeah.
If he's on camera watching this, we've got explaining to do. But if it's just dawned on me now, just as you were sitting there describing the weather and like how you feel about it, I was like, you're the fucking golden retriever to my black cat.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why this show works.
Yeah, I think, but it's even in DM style and everything. Like it's that, like, yeah, you're the, yeah.
I was going to send you something the other day. It's from the Betty Boop musical. It's this musical number where it's a really technicolor scene, and then the cast swap, and it's all kind of noir and black and white. And I was going to send it to you or send it into the group with like what it feels like to move from a Ben game to a Declan game. But I never know sometimes if you're just like it's. I don't want to feel like it's like, and now for more humdrum darkness and sad and drama, and you're like, I have fun, because we do. I think we have discussed that before.
I think my favorite thing about it, because I'll be honest with you, a couple of weeks ago, it was quite an off the cuff remark. That
By me?
No. Somebody else made, and it was like, oh, Declan's games equal trauma, and I was like, oh. Yeah, I mean, I guess I pack a lot of like emotional stuff into my games, and I like the narrative and story and character and that stuff. It actually really upset me, because I also I love that stuff, and I love being at a table where people are comfortable, kind of going into that stuff. But I'm Jim Jam Flim Flam. I'm like, there. So what I do think, and I had a big long conversation with myself about it, and I do think if Astro Rookie, they definitely meant it as like a joke, but it was one of those things where you're like I laughed, and then I overthought it. You know, that thing where you're like, oh, but like, is that a thing? So I definitely think it kind of, I it stuck with me for a little bit. So I think what it is if I'm trying to get a good metaphor for this. I think on the surface of my games, like if we were just taking it purely as a superficial level and we're talking about the depths of it, I think a lot of the if it's like an iceberg, like what you see in a lot of my games is that heavy. That's I think what I'm kind of known for is those big moments, those characters, those really really sort of like oof moments, and then the little bit that you don't see at the bottom. It's the opposite. If an iceberg was flipped upside down,
Tiny little.
I won an award for writing.
For storytelling, for writing and storytelling. But I know what you mean. I'm conscious of it because public facing, and by that I mean like in the Discords we're in and in our WhatsApp groups and stuff, I'll often razz on you for being like, you're so mean, stop being mean to us. And I know that's not the case, but it's sort of like kayfabe, like I'm breaking kayfabe at the moment, but that's all performative playing into type, and it's like, what people often see, or where like a meme comes out of it, or where you take something and you ramp it up to 11 or 12. So it's like, it makes sense where like my reputation is like, Ben, why do you always have to play a weird little guy? And I'm like, all right, and like I don't, but I'm happy to play into that. And I think the same, you said something last show that you were like, and it stuck with me in a really nice way, was that not being afraid to play the fool in games. And like Declan experienced this firsthand last night where, and this is a true story, I had a bowl of ice cream and jelly after dinner and I had a sugar rush, and the WhatsApp group was chaotic all on my behalf for a split second. And then I calmed down after a cold shower.
While trying to discuss something, not serious, but like an actual plan. We were trying to organize something.
Yeah.
But it's the golden, someone gave the golden retriever a new squeaky toy. But I think actually this is I can segue out of this into tonight's topic.
Great.
And because tonight we're talking about gods and deities and pantheons and world building and like how these things can fit into your world mechanically and narratively. And this is the thing with a lot of, because if you're listening to Romance in the Dungeon, if you watched Rise of the Forsaken or Beyond Horizon's Edge, I love playing with gods. I have never heard of jelly and ice cream. Oh, okay. So jelly here,
peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, not jam. Because jam don't shake. Sorry, you have to say
Jim Jelly Flim Flelly.
Oh my god, yeah. In the US, he'd be Jim Jelly Flim Felly. Oh, that's kind of cute too.
Or Jim Jello Frimfellow.
Yeah.
And he's like Flimfla. My name's Jim
yeah.
Jello Flimfellow.
Oh my god. Okay, he has to have like and like, so we don't have America. We don't have America in the world of Romancing the Dungeon. I'll have to come up with like the Rothaham. Rothaham is the I won't say American equivalent, but you know, it's the American. Yeah, that's where.
Yeah, it makes sense why Hephaestus Summers there. Yeah,
yes,
totally.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Actually, yes, it's canon. It's canon. But my husband does actually eat ice cream and jam.
I mean, I can see it working. Like when you think about a raspberry ripple, it's sort of a jam.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you're right. Jelly and jam are two things. Whereas this is more of I found a vegan. It's not gelatin. What is jelly?
It's gelatin.
It is just gelatin.
Just
right?
Gelatin. Yeah. Just gelatin.
So yeah, I found some vegan gelatin.
Is it the seaweed one?
No, it was called.
There's a seaweed byproduct that you can use that's used for vegan jellies. Jello.
Yes, like Jello. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, God. So like Romancing the Dungeon, obviously we have there's a lot of gods, and they're a big part of the world, they're a big part of the lore, and they're also a big part of my story. And that is such a Zool, you're not willing at all. I think I'm delirious from heat, and I think Ben's delirious from the heat, but in a good way and in a bad way. So I've been able to, outside of those two kind of dueling deities, there is this whole other plethora of gods that I've had a lot of fun with. In the world of Romancing Dungeon, the god of death is actually a big giant celestial whale called Finn, who gobbles up souls and blasts them out his blowhole into the other world. But if he thinks you need a little bit longer to think about your life and that maybe the things he holds you in his belly, the god of the harvest is a small little field mouse called Chaff, but he's actually got a second job because he's also one who finds missing things. So it's been, and like, there's a god that came up recently. Now it's not, we've recorded it, but we haven't had a chance to play with it. But it's been a lot of fun, kind of getting to play these types of figures in a campaign and putting it out there. Home games and like any games that I would have done previously, for friends, gods were in everything. Like I had them constantly, and they would pop down and railroad something. And this is actually our prompt for tonight.
Oh yes.
We want to talk about what we'd like you to talk about. What's the most ridiculous thing a god has done in a game you played or ran? So whether you were the DM or you were a player, and a god or gods popped up and did something, and you get to decide what ridiculous there means, like funny or like overpowered, world breaking, game breaking. But I I have to say I love a story with a pantheon. Like I think I'm a sucker for the Greeks and all their mischief, and I think that definitely influences me in a big way.
Yes, yeah. I couldn't like. I'm trying to think. In Homebrew, we used the sort of ancient Irish pantheon. So we dipped into the Tuatha Dé Danann as our gods. I think I was trying to think of how much they were involved versus not involved, and they were. It's a tough thing to do, I think, because you've got these all-powerful, like, creatures. The type of creatures that if you're playing something like Dungeons and Dragons, often if they don't want something to be able to die, they don't give it a stat block. And gods and worlds don't tend to have them because it's like, well, if it has a stat block, players can and will kill it. And so gods sort of exist outside of like your traditional monster manual or bestiary.
Sorry, I'm just writing that down.
Yes.
Don't give Hedona a stat block.
Or two if you want to, because that's a choice as a GM whether to put hit points on something, or whether to put a finite amount of power. And so in Homebrew, I'm trying to remember. I think about halfway through, I started introducing the gods in a more serious way. I think I was laying down some plot, and the reason I'm being a little bit like wiggly about it is I don't think we ever followed it in the campaign, and it's still there as a potential return to the world or campaign 2 or 3 thing that the players can explore. So, but I do remember really enjoying describing, I think one of the gods, I can't remember which, ends up dying, or they find a dead god. And that's obviously pretty terrifying because it's suddenly, the thing that's all powerful can be killed. And just describing the kind of what it looks like when a god dies, and this idea of like a universe or multiple universes or a cosmos sort of, they didn't bleed, they just sort of were exploded in what looked like infinite power and resource. And so even within that, there's like smaller worlds and smaller campaigns and other things happening, so that when each god, there's like a universe in it in and of itself. And I quite like that as I love campaigns where power personified has implications. And I think when you start talking about pantheons and deities, you inherently move into cosmos and reality, which is really fascinating. And then the eternal challenge as a DM is, a funny thing, I was trying to think of an analogy like this today. It's the Spider-Man problem. Spider-Man stops crime at a local neighborhood level. He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And once Spider-Man goes to space and joins the Avengers, how do you make the street robbery important again? So like when the world is at stake, how can you make like a local robbery or like the mayor's son has been kidnapped by goblins. I'm like, yeah, I mean, okay, cool, but like, if we don't do this, everyone dies. And usually that's the point in campaigns where gods get sort of introduced, where it's you're no longer worried about the day-to-day town side quests, and it's tough as a DM because you can go like, oh well, I just want to like pad this out a little bit. Like, how about this? And your players would be like, no, we're the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission from God. Like, we gotta go do this thing. It's more powerful. So they're I find them a very dangerous thing to introduce to a game, and that's what makes them very exciting.
I see. I love because when we talk about kind of gods in games, they can pardon the pun, but they can dominate the whole plot, because it is, as you said, Ben, it's that thing of, well, I've introduced the god of war. They need you to go and do this thing. Okay, but actually, while you're on the road, you've encountered, a town that needs your help. Defeating some bugbears who are, stealing sheep or whatever. Well, we can't, because God needs us to keep. We have to go do that thing that you said. I often I always think there's a fun way of doing that. Like, I mean, I literally started Romance in Dungeon with a mission from God, do right by love, and that is the most vague possible decree / order / command / statement from a god. Like, what does that actually mean? And it's not because I didn't know what it meant, but it ended up kind of like backseating in the show, kind of for the first season, and then the players kind of went, there's this thing that's happening that actually there's all this other stuff happening, but they never turned to look at what God had said, like, or a god had said to them, and it all kind of gets messy there. And so I think when you do bring gods in for plot, it's that, I guess it's being aware of, well, how serious are the players going to take this? How serious do you want them to take it? Like, and like, is there a sort of a like, if it's the campaign, the god of light needs you to defeat the god of darkness. Great. That's the campaign. And I can pepper in all these other little missions. But if we started off as, oh, we're just a bunch of adventurers and we stopped a ship that was stealing from a small portside town, and we played that for a couple of weeks, and now the goddess of the sea thinks that they need us to stop a prophecy. Okay, so we've gone from stopping this to saving the world, and those two things are very, very different. So I think managing your pantheon is incredibly important, and it's something that I really, really enjoy doing, because when I build a pantheon, I build it with the politics in mind. Like, I don't like to see the gods as, oh, that's the god of this and that's the god of that and that's that. I often like to link them in that sort of kind of the Greek gods with the, well, are they related? Are they married? Are they brother and sister? Are they
all three?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, yeah. Usually all three if it's the Greeks, Greek gods. But just to clarify, but I've always kind of tried to play with that, and like I've used that in kind of different facets. Like, I used to play GURPS. I used to run a lot of GURPS games in college, and I would have there was the Mother, Maiden, and Crone were my kind of my deities in this world, and I would use them quite a bit. And depending on what you rolled on your d6, a 111, a 333, or a 666, one of those gods would pop up, and there could be something very different depending on where your alliances were. And it was a lot of fun, but it quickly became this thing of, well, I follow the goddess of this, you follow the goddess of that, we don't talk to each other, we're in the same party, and we got to go do this thing, and they're at odds with each other. It's all a bit much, or it can get a bit much.
There's two points in chat, and I think it's a good one. When we were talking about, like, how do you have a big god mission and then also make them care about the things along the way? Seamaster D pointed out that paladins are great because paladins are sort of bound to an oath. So if one of those oaths are like never going to let the little guy suffer, then like they're not going to pass that by. And as Zoe mentions, their cleric, how they play their cleric is quite important to their god, obviously. And so clerics and paladins seem like a natural place. You start to ask yourself questions like, if there isn't a cleric or a paladin in a party, is there a role for... I guess the point I'm getting to is that the religion stat is so rarely used as a skill in D&D. I would also, like, I think I'll try play this at some point in time, but we often think as monks as the martial arts class. But I've always wanted to play a monk from the sort of Franciscan sense. And then therefore making them a religious type.
Campaign 2.
I'm going to be a monk. And I was, even for Homebrew, because obviously a lot of our content centers around alcohol, that sense of brewing beer and being a monk, and it makes sense. And then you still pick, you probably pick Drunken Master as your fighting style. You still play the monk as a fighting type, but just that idea of weaving that in. And I suppose, actually, to be fair to one of the biggest shows out there, Critical Role did it quite well in Campaign 2, where Beauregard is a monk, but she's Way of the Cobalt Stole, and it was an investigator style. So it was all about research and learning and kind of figuring things out. So it is the idea of that isn't somewhat unique. Is there... I was trying to think before we jump to, because we've an incredible interview. I had the privilege of giving it a watch earlier on today, because I get to see behind the scenes in this show. Otherwise, it'd be weird if I didn't. So Declan would just have to sit here silently when we play it as I watch the interview with you. And I'm excited to talk about it. So I'm a little bit, I can feel myself being like, let's play it so we can talk about it. But before we get there, I pulled out this from my drawer. It's a book called Secrets. It's a book I bought before we even started Homebrew. And it's interesting to note that it's not even like I barely wrote into it, but the handful of pages, the 10 pages I have filled in, start with the history of Hibernia and then straight into the Pantheon. It's the next page. And I drew it's probably far too, I'll turn off my light. Boop. That's made it worse, but easier to see. Straight into a family tree and then everything about the gods on the next couple of pages. And then a map of the plains. And that's all I've ever written in this book, which, funny enough, if you've seen Campaign 1, is kind of all I needed. That was this whole story was rolling around here. But it helped me from let's say, the goddess Breed. I put in like the D&D equivalent, their ideals, what a shrine in the world might look like. So for Breed, I said they had no shrine, but they're associated with highlands, hill forts, high rising flames, and where you might find a woven cross, you'll find Breed. Whereas for, let's see if there's anyone else. Avandra. Oh, Avandra was the only D&D god I left in, the goddess of luck, because I just thought it was nice to take like mostly Irish and then take one in. No temples, only wayward shrines in the wilderness. All taverns are her temple, which I thought was quite nice. Just a little like all of these places are the temple of Avandra. So are the things you consider when building out pantheons. And what I like in the world of Romance and Dungeon is you kind of have your old gods and your new gods, your big ones and your little ones, and then there's almost, it feels like they not that they're birthed from this, but when society or humanity have a need, there tends to be the one who finds lost things, the one who does this, the one who does that, which I like, that your naming system comes from people, not from them. Because you're giving them titles, you're giving them kind of responsibilities before they even have names. But how do you go about building your pantheon?
So this is interesting because you said something there that I can I ask you? I will answer that question, but can I ask you, because you said you took out your book Secrets and you said you started with the world Hibernia. Did you, when you say that, do you mean like you had the world mapped out and you knew what it was in it and then came the gods, or did the gods come first and then the world followed afterwards, the physical space?
That's a good question that I need to cast my mind back.
Well,
I can tell you. Yeah, okay. The first sentence here is history of Hibernia. It all starts with one all-powerful creator, which was my kind of way of doing, so like Danu and the two of the Danon, no one really knows who Danu is. So it was kind of like one into many, and sort of, you know, in a similar way that like art can mimic itself. The gods were the theme of my campaign, I suppose, is like what happens when a world gets shattered, and we often think that the broken thing needs to be fixed, but actually the broken thing was purposely broken, and it should remain broken, and do not fix this thing. And this was this idea that this one god got split into many gods, as the one world got split into many worlds. So it's why like my literal thing says like shattering, gods, a map of the planes broken apart. And not to spoil the campaign, but for anyone who has watched it, that becomes a kind of recurring theme of. I just wanted to explore the theme. I was like, I didn't have an answer, and that's what I love playing games like this with almost like a philosophical question and let the game answer it. And it's like, is a world better isolated or connected? And if connected equals like more like tension or like more kind of like ways for things to go wrong, is that actually a price we should all be willing to pay, because more goodness can come out of it? And so you get into themes like, is it better to keep like your kid wrapped in a bubble and they live a very safe but not very exciting life, or let them live an exciting life but they might bruise their knee and fall from a tree and all that kind of stuff? So it's those little themes. I haven't read this in years, so I actually don't know where I went, but it was this idea of it starts at one and then something was introduced which I called the unbalance, and the unbalance tried to offer nature a way to be people, and it tried to offer fish a way to fly and birds a way to swim, and the only people who took it were people. And that's how magic was born in the world, where they took the magic of the elements and they took the power of flight from the birds, and animals used to be able to speak, but they no longer can because they took that from them. And all things having equality became people having power. And in that, the world shattered, I think. Yeah. And then in that, humankind was divided because of it as well, because suddenly they started hoarding things.
Genuinely, nice I could just. I mean, yes, we have the.
Do you want me to read the thing? It's 2 pages.
Jesus, like that was class. That was actually so cool.
Yeah. We don't really. I mean, if you watch campaign 1, you get none of this.
What the hell, Mastered? What the hell?
The first 2 pages, and then we're into nonsense.
I'm conscious of our time, because I know you need a hard out, and I do want. I want to answer your question about kind of coming up with pantheons and creating gods and stuff like that. I think there's a good way to start this, because I got an awful lot from the interview that I got to do. I sat down with Daniel, the dungeon master for the Knights Who Say Chill, and I believe I left it in. I don't think I cut it out of the interview, but I told Daniel I'm stealing his idea. I think it's class. It's such a fun way of world building and creating gods for your space. So we're gonna cut to that interview. It's about 30. It's just a little over 30 minutes. It actually went nearly twice as long as that, and I kept apologizing to Daniel for taking all his time, but we've cut back down. And I hope you get as much from the chat I had with Daniel as I did. So we'll see you in about 30 minutes. Yep. I am joined this evening by Daniel, the Dungeon Master, Game Master for the Knights Who Say Chill. I'm going to actually start there first, Daniel, because it's a weird one. Do you prefer the title Dungeon Master or Game Master?
You know, I've played for a long time, and Dungeon Master is kind of it's kind of nostalgic, because it's like what I started back in my teens and stuff like that. But I'm like, I think now I kind of like the GM better. It's a little bit more of a neutral. It's a neutral title. The Dungeon Master, like I said, nostalgic, but Game Master carries less of that satanic panic.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, yeah. It's what a nice way to kind of get into that. Like Dungeon Master, satanic panic. Let's talk about God.
Yes.
I'm gonna just very quickly mention that Daniel and I have connected through one of Daniel's players, Zool, who is probably in chat right now as this is going out. So thanks so much, Azul, for the link here. They had amazing things to say about your world building, and in particular your the kind of the way in which religion, gods, deities are woven into your world and the stories that your party gets to play. So as a game master who very much likes the same thing, like gods are such a big part of mine. I'm gonna start, Daniel, with a kind of a when you're world building, and whether it's kind of a continuation into a campaign, or would say something even probably like from the start, like a brand new campaign, brand new world. Does God come first? It's the chicken or the egg conversation. Like, do the gods come first and then the world, or do you start with the world and then fit a pantheon into that?
I think I've done it a little bit of both ways. I've done a lot of. I prefer homebrew as much as I can, because world building is my ultimate favorite thing about being a GM. Character interaction, character hooking is a very close second, but the world building, building cultures, building, wonders of the world and things just to describe and have your players get to play in the playground is my ultimate favorite. And I would say sometimes I built worlds where the gods are first because of the concept of the world. And sometimes they're secondary or even tertiary because they're not as involved in the actual concept. Like there might be a very religious component or a deific component to a specific culture, so I have to do it first. But for like the one that I did now, Ilor, for the campaign I'm running for Zool and our friends, it was really kind of a secondary kind of concept. I started them just on a continent, and then I expanded that continent and went out further and further. And then I suddenly went, wait a second, I'm to that stage that I need to start grounding this in. And cultures are religion, even if they don't have a religion, that's a religion in itself. And so all cultures have some kind of effect of that. So I decided to do a kind of a really fun thing with this one. I don't know if you want to talk about that specifically.
Yeah, if you're comfortable diving into it, let's.
Yeah. So this is a long thing, but I've been running for decades and playing and then running, but I prefer to run now. But I've always wanted to try something, and this group is just so much fun that they'll just anytime I say, hey, can we try something, they jump right on board. They're great that way. I decided, because I've done worlds where I've created the gods, and I've done worlds where I've created or I've used the gods from the Pantheon, like Kryn from Dragonlance, or Forgotten Realms that has so many gods, or even I did a Greek campaign where each of them were a scion of a Greek god, and I took the technology way back to just what they would have in Greek times. It was a fun concept, but that was where gods were much more present. But I always thought it would be much more fun because it feels sometimes like player characters don't, or the players don't get to have a lot of, I can't think of the term I want to use, not control, but
almost agency in that space.
Agency is exactly the word I was thinking for. That's exactly it. So I always want to give more agency and more connection, because if you're just sitting there playing the game, I've got to figure out how to connect you into these adventures. So what I've always wanted to do, and like I said, this group was great about it, is that I decided to do you're going to help me create the Pantheon. You're each going to help create a god, and then I I polished them once we were done, and I controlled a little bit of the outside edge of it. But I said, you're going to create the gods. So when you come into this world, you're going to have something that you're connected to. Your character doesn't have to be connected to that god, but you have agency and you have interaction already with this, so you feel like you're already involved in the creation of this world, because it's a very one-sided concept many times, that the GM just presents you this world and here's all the things. But if I can get you deeper into it, you're going to have more fun, because it feels like it's something you've been involved with. So we did what I would call a fantasy football draft, and we went around the table and picked different versions of our god, like purviews or components of their domain, so things like that. So I can talk about it further if you want.
You've actually kind of stumbled into something there that I'm really, really curious about, because when it kind of comes to player agency and stuff like that, it's often that thing of like, oh, it's the paladin and it's the cleric, or maybe even possibly a warlock, where you have to pick, some sort of divine, celestial, demonic, whatever it might be, entity that is going to bestow your powers upon you. But oftentimes, religion then kind of goes without any real impact.
Yeah.
So when your players are all kind of set around and they're, like, as you said, fantasy footballing their way through through this pantheon, is there something in particular that you were looking for, Daniel, then from them, or is it very much sort of open to them and let's see what we can do with it?
I really left it open. I was nervous because I'd never done it. I've been wanting to do it for probably 20 years and just finally had the chance for the right group to do it. And really, I just broke down the list of domains from 5th edition D&D, and I said, okay, here's the list. And I'm not going to assume that fantasy football is a big thing for a lot of your fandom, but we pick teams and we keep track of scores. But one of the interesting things about that is it's called a snake draft. Is that when you get first pick, you don't get first pick every time. It goes, and then person number 6 picks twice and it comes back.
Yeah.
So it's a more equitable way of drafting. So this is what we did, is that, so basically the first person picked the first domain, second person picked their first domain, and as they went, they each got 3 or 4. I don't remember how many there are. I added a couple just to kind of round out the number, but basically I just kind of let them go and just had fun with it. It was one of our most fun live things we did, just because they were joking about it and they were getting involved, and they're like, oh, this is what I'm picturing for my god. They were thinking about even trading, like if somebody got one that they wanted, they were willing to trade.
Okay.
And I really just said, okay, just get to the end of this, and then we'll see how weird it is. If it's weird, we'll tweak it a little bit, but by a vast majority, it ended up becoming very cool. That they each kind of developed a concept, and it worked out. Now we had to flip one set of domains to make it completely work, but for saying that, it worked really well. And the fact is that some of these are new players, and some are semi-experienced, so it runs the gamut. The newest player brought the most interesting energy to it because they have no baggage of D&D.
Yeah.
And hers was the most interesting overall. So I'll let you go there.
I'm curious then. So where your players have had that much free reign in kind of this space, if and again, if you're like, nah, that didn't happen, it didn't happen, and that's great. But has there been moments then where they nat 20'd, or they were at a temple and they called on that god expecting X, Y, and Z, because I made you, and this is the way, and you're all, you're the goddess of knowledge, and you share that knowledge, and so I expect you to share that knowledge with me. Has there been any issues then where like players have tried to I'm not going to say use that to their benefit, but I'm going to say interpret it the way they saw it versus the way you see it, or like challenging that sort of that deity in a way that you didn't see coming up?
Not really. The one difference, I haven't had a lot of interaction with temples yet, because a lot of the story arcs have had them, like at one point they went off onto a floating magocracy city, and the only interaction they really had with the god before that was they saw some of the death followers that were doing the rituals of taking the bodies to the temple. They saw that just as kind of like an Easter egg, because it was immediately after we did it. I kind of put it in like, oh, this is kind of a cool thing. And then the goddess of travel, we designed this special flower that indicates safe spots that she's set up for travelers, and it's a special flower that gives peace within a campsite. So I said I did a couple of Easter eggs. The most interaction I think we've probably had is the one character who created the death god. His story, he started as a monk of the goddess of light, and because of a tragic story point in his background, he switched to the goddess of death. And he's the one that designed the goddess of death, partially because of his background. And then subsequently, within a couple of sessions, his character died, which for many of these was the first character death, which is a fascinating concept when you see the first character death in a group. People that have ever experienced. I'm like, this is a big deal, guys. Take your time with this. We're going to need to talk about this. He wanted to have a little bit more interaction with the whole concept, but I had something involved as a point beyond that I had to stop it. So I normally probably would have let him play a little bit in that world, but there was another hook further down the road because of his death that I couldn't let him go off into that whole thing.
Okay.
If I wish I could have let him have a little bit more play in that world, but just because of the way things ended, I had to keep him on that hook a little bit longer.
If I'd love to kind of I would love to talk to you a bit more about this and steal loads of your ideas, Daniel.
Absolutely.
D&D
is open for everybody. That's what I love.
It is that thing of like I always think like the best ideas are always born out of like, oh, I see what you're doing there. I'm going to borrow that and I'm going to do this with it.
Steal it. I'm going to steal it. I mean, don't even put the borrow on it. Just steal it.
I'm just stealing it. I'm just flat out stealing it. But I'd love to kind of if we moved away from sort of that space where the players are creating it for just for you and your process then, when you are thinking of gods for yourself, for worlds that you are kind of crafting and creating, I guess kind of what comes first for you? Like, is that god there as a narrative hook? You know, this is going to be. I guess it does kind of depend on the campaign that you're looking at, but do gods influence that campaign very early on for you in your pre-planning?
I would say probably not. I think I am probably one of those that, unless it is a very specific campaign style, like the Greek god one, it started session 1. Here is you talking to your god because somebody's attacking their pantheon, and you are their champion. Here are their powers they're bestowing upon you. Boom, there you go. That's direct god involvement. But I would say all of the other, worlds I've created, I would put them as much more removed, almost Exandrian in their way, like a Critical Role, how they're beyond that shield. Where I kind of like that concept because it gets to be very easy to be heavy-handed as a DM if your gods are walking the world. Faerun had that problem in 2nd edition, and they eventually, when they went to 3rd edition for D&D Forgotten Realms, they moved all their gods away because before that their gods walked the world. And it's not much fun when everything your group does can be just undone by a god walking by. So I would say they are removed. They're still interacting with their emissaries in the world, and they can still twist fate. They can still nudge the story where they need to do, and that can be very interesting. But I think it can be done very easily, be overdone very quickly. So I use that as a last resort. So I use them more for culture, and then tweaking fate from time to time. But anything more than that, and it gets a little heavy-handed.
I guess that leads me to kind of a question then when it comes to gods and that pantheon. Where do you then strike the balance, or how do you strike a balance between, that interaction with the let's say the goddess or the god of fire, and I need this god I need them to feel like a god, but at the same time they're not going to, they're not going to change the world. They're not going to rewrite the campaign. It's that sort of like you need them to feel powerful and as if they could do all these things, but they're choosing not to. Where do you strike a balance there? And I guess how do you maintain that then?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that much. I would lend towards the majesty of the character and portraying that as much as you can. But I would say it's a little bit of majesty and mystery. That the balance I would strike would be that you don't know all the things that god knows, and the thing you're asking may not be the thing that it needs to happen because it has its own plans. They have their own plans, and what you're asking for may not be in their benefit. And gods, if not anything else, are selfish. It's very rare to find a non-selfish god. But I would lend towards that balance of I don't want to overplay my hand, so I would be more mysterious about it, and then but still, if there's any question about the majesty and the power effect, I would lean into that and be like, you don't get to question me because you don't see the grand tapestry, you don't get to see the whole plan, you don't get to see the blueprint, and you don't have your finger on the pulse of this world that I do. So I would do magic and kind of mystery with that.
Daniel, is there something that you like a particular god, or is it that process with the kind of the drafting? Is there something that you've kind of created that you yourself are particularly proud of, or whether it be that sort of drafting process, or a particular god that you're like, that's mine. That is my that's going on a shelf, like as a sort of I loved that god, or I loved that process, or that worship, or what that kind of transpired to be.
No, not so much. This is the first time I've done it, so we're still in the prototype stage. So I think there's some tweaking that I would do. Not a lot because it's worked really well, but I have felt that gap of those first ones of what happens if somebody wants something to do with something lost or fire. I don't have that many gods. I only have 6, because there's only 6 of us. So
Okay.
I'm like, there is a gap of who covers that. So I'm like, that's an interesting theory of that next level down of taking on those conceptual ideas, and that's something I'll probably do. I think the most interesting thing to this is that it drove me. I had no idea how this world was created. I just was giving them a blank canvas to work. Here's the continent. As you expand, I'll build another continent. I'll build another one. Sometimes I go world out. I usually go world out, but this is the first time that I'm trying to go continent up, or like even city up. Because we started in a city, and then they did a one shot. Some of them just wanted to try D&D. So this really came from like a one shot that turned into a 5 shot, that turned into, hey, we want to keep going. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I didn't have anything planned. So I'm like, I got to maintain the continuity of what you guys have done, and then build out from this forest that you saved, this forest guardian. Okay, what's on the other side of that forest? Okay, what's over there? What's over there? So instead of my normal method of coming from here in, where I would look at the Pantheon and I would look at like the underlying concept, like often I would use like a concept, like the world is shattered, or the world is this, or the sky is on fire. What makes this place cool? This is the first one that I'm going in out, and I was like, I have no idea how this world was created. I have no idea. I didn't even have a name for the world yet. So when we did this Pantheon draft, it gave me the inspiration to go, okay, now, well, how do the gods do this? I'm like, okay, so I literally, by the time we played our next campaign, our next session, I had a creation story ready, and I read it at the start of the session. I said, okay, now that you guys have created the gods, here's the story of the gods. Here's the ages now that I've started to build, things like that. So it's just like I said at the beginning, gods influence culture, and culture influences people, and people influence the story. So what I like to do is see this whole concept of, even if they never meet a god face to face, there's the effect of those gods on this world, because the name of this world is in the old tongue that I did this, is the reason why it's named the way it is because of what the gods did. And so it's like it's given me this whole new inspiration to look at it from a different angle and go, okay, that's cool. Now I don't have to think about that early, because it gets to be pretty hollow when you think about it early. It's like it's just there, and now you have to deal with it. Now I have a reason why it's there, and that's been made it so much more fun for me.
I love that idea of sort of I think it's come up a lot, from speaking to various different creators over the last year or so with Ben and Declan On A Roll, but the people we seem to have connected with all generally start small, and kind of, over time it kind of rolls out, and it feels more concrete, it feels more real, it feels more tangible. And whether that's a world with gods for a campaign, or a bookshop, or a system that people are developing, I love this idea of kind of, because we do, I think, particularly as game masters, we tend to start out here and then narrow it down until you end up with the people at the table. So I just need your backstory, and you have to take that backstory. You have to make that backstory now fit into all this stuff.
Yes.
I And I think I'm a bit like yourself, Daniel. I'm at this quite a long time. I enjoy it an awful lot, and I like being a player, but I do kind of prefer being in the DM's chair.
Oh, yeah.
That it's way more fun, I think. But I
100%.
yeah, I do. I've done that. I've done this is the whole world. I've made it for you. Go run around in it. Like it's the sandbox. It's I've done that, and I love this idea of starting in the woods, and then we don't know what's outside those trees until one of you takes a step out there, and we're going to add to that. And I think you've still, like, my last question was really like advice for game masters when it comes to Pantheon or religion. But I love that idea though of just start there and let it kind of build out.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you could add on to that? Is there anything that you like either a lesson that you've learned when it comes to pantheons and religions in your games, or that you've seen other creators take on that you're like, that's actually, I think everyone should try a little bit of this?
It's kind of related to pantheons in the way that if you have light, you have dark. One thing that I've really been stressing with this group, because some of them are new, some of them are getting an understanding for D&D. I loved. I'm going to take a step back. I love D&D. I have played it for decades. I find it to be one of the most fascinating things to do with a group of friends. I am such a broken bird person that if I find somebody that had a bad D&D example or encounter, and they've stopped playing because it was their older brother and his friends, and they were bullies, and they didn't let me do anything, I'm like, come to my table, you're my broken bird, I'm going to help you, I'm going to give you a better setting. I love teaching people how to play. I love having new players because it brings a whole new energy. Like even if you can't do what you just asked, the energy that you just brought to that is amazing. Like one of our new players just started really understanding that there are character decisions, and I saw it in her face on the screen when it happened, and I'm like, you just made a character decision, you didn't make a player decision. And it was hard because she wanted to go in the room, but her character wouldn't have. And so I love that concept. But one of the things that I'm pushing this time to come back around now now that you understand my idea, is safety tools. I didn't understand them. I'd heard them. I really looked into it this session for this campaign and said, okay, I've got new players. I've got to get them to understand the benefits of D&D. And so I have looked at this in a way of, there is gods in my world, and they took it away from demons. So demons are a part of this story, and demons do bad things. And so I said, we're going to sit down, we're going to do safety tools, and we're going to say, okay, what are you comfortable with? I'm not going to do horrible things on camera just because I want to, but if it drives the story, I need to have that freedom to do that. And so gods can do horrible things too. So anytime you have this effect on the player, you have to be like, there can be some brutality, there can be some abuse, there can be torture, there can be blood on the walls. I even went down to the point of, like, if I describe blood on the walls, do you want me to do that? I mean, because some people have had, you don't know what that person across the screen or across the table from you has ever experienced. Maybe they were abused. Maybe they saw a horrible thing in their life, and that's a trigger that they need to do. You have to dig that out sometimes and be like, let me know. But because of the quick ability of Pantheon and Pantheon activity to take away your agency, I would say safety tools would be the number one thing. Of gods, demons, anything of that level, that power ability can very quickly make you feel like you can't do anything because they're so much more powerful than you, that I would say safety tools would be the number one thing. It'd be like, if this is a thing, like if I put you in manacles on a wall and there's a demon walking up to you and the guy beside you is getting tortured, is this a thing? Is if this god of light, doesn't let you get up and you're claustrophobic, and I describe this in a way that you have no ability to get out of this room or to even stand up in his presence, is that going to trigger anything? So I think when you're dealing with that power level compared to Boblin the Goblin, he's probably not going to trigger as much, but you have such an ability to just roll over players with power level that I think that safety tools would be a number one component.
I said to Daniel in my message during the week, and then before we started recording, this will take 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops. We've sat here for nearly an hour.
I love it.
I'm so sorry. Last question, Daniel, and this is a kind of your space. So where can we find out more about your worlds, your gods? Where can we see your table in action?
Well, we play, 3 of the members that we play with. All of us are from the Wheel of Time fandom. That's how we all met. It's a series of books that we all love. It's hold dear. It's a great fantasy setting. It's 14 books. It's one of the best of all time. It's on the list very often by Robert Jordan. But Amazon has done a show of it, so we all became more active and friends. 3 of the people run a show called Wheel and Chill, the Wheel and Chill show, and they're content creators for the Wheel of Time fandom. Myself and now my wife, who I met through the fandom just recently, were moderators on their Discord, and we're just generally friends with them, and they pulled us in to get more involved. And then Zool is a moderator and huge active member of the fandom for Wheel of Time, and then another member. That's all of them. We are on there. So Wheel and Chill, you'll see us talk about it on there if you want to look at Wheel and Chill. There is I believe on YouTube, they have a playlist for the Knights Who Say Chill, and it's also the band of the really, really, really good guys is what they call it. I'm like, okay, I don't have any control over the group, Dave. But the Knights Who Say Chill is just kind of a play off the Wheel and Chill. That's where you'll see a lot of me talk about D&D. I don't really have any other areas that I live stream on it. It's just been a lot of fun to get together and play with some friends and some nerds that want to learn about D&D and the different levels of that. So that's my general area. I do have a podcast that I just recently started with a couple of friends. It's called we just launched our first couple of episodes. It's called Me, Him, and That Other Guy. And so we found out that the group of friends, the 3 of us, are close, that often 2 of us are interested in something and the third is that other guy that doesn't have anything to do with it. And so it's a lot about 2 of us. It changes constantly. So 2 of us are into D&D. The other guy has never played in his life. 2 of us are into football. The other guy isn't as big a fan of that. So it's just all about finding that other guy and getting his interaction on the thing he doesn't know about. And so we haven't talked yet, but D&D will come up on there. So if you get a chance, check that out. We're having a lot of fun with that.
Because I think we both sit here for easily another hour.
Easily.
I'm gonna say that's all we have time for. I'm gonna have fun editing this. But I do want to say thank you so much for your time. That was
absolutely.
The amount of stuff I've written down that I'm like stealing this, writing this down, loving this, taking this. Mm-hmm. So Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Links to the Knights Who Say Chill and the Me, Him, and the Other Guy we will have over on the right hand side. So do make sure you check those out. And Daniel, until we get to sit down and chat again, I look forward to seeing more of what your Pantheon gets up to in the show. So we're going to leave it there. I'm going to hand back to Ben and myself in the present. The time's weird.
Present Declan.
Present Declan is going to say hi. But thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
And we are back. Okay, so before we kind of get into, I never turned off the applause. I'm so sorry. I just love applauding us. Good job, me, for that interview.
Yeah, applause, people.
I want to say thank you to Zool for helping to set that chat up. About a year ago, when Zool first popped up in chat and was chatting away. Then they popped over to the Discord, and I think we said that we were going to be talking about Pantheons, and then it was, oh, hey, you should talk to my DM, Daniel. And then Zool got Daniel to join the Discord, and then reminded me that, hey, you're remember you're supposed to talk to Daniel? And I was like, No. And then I said we were doing a different episode, and then I went, oh wait, no, we're not doing that episode tonight. We're doing this. So a big thank you to Zool for helping us set that up. And actually, Ben and I, Ben said it, and it's actually yes. We would love to talk to your DMs.
Yeah.
So if you have a DM that you're like, they do this really cool thing, or they run the table this way, or they get so excited about new systems, or there's something at their table that we just love, like, and maybe they're just a great DM, and you want them, you want to give them a space to kind of, for us to gush over and like fawn over, then do set us up. It would be we would love to, and I said it in an interview, I'm stealing that snake drafting. It's such a, and I don't know if I'd use it all the time, but it's such an interesting world building mechanic.
Should we do it because we were chatting while the interview was on about ways to use a snake draft, and I'd be well up for doing it for what we talked about in the break. If you want to, I don't want to put it out there because we don't do it, but we were talking about doing it for character creation, so that people, as they snake draft, are picking class, race, stats. That
could be a fun episode to do, but then to play those characters would be a lot of fun as well. So we would, it's funny because even when because I said before we went to the interview was just under an hour, and it's all of that stuff was fantastic. And when I was editing it, I was like, okay, what do I cut out of this? Because there's a lot of great stuff in what Daniel was sharing. I really love it, and I'm also kind of slightly terrified of it, because I am a big believer in giving the players agency in your world building. I've said it before, I've said it here on stream. I think it's very important, because it makes the world feel more real to them. It makes them feel like they have a stake in it. I don't know if I can hand out that much agency. Like, here's God, make God. I'm like,
Declan had to deal with this with me last time we were playing, where I met a God and I was like, can I have this power? And I think he saw that the character wasn't speaking. Ben was just like, can I have this? And you were like, no. I'm like, but I want this though. But we're coming to endgame. Like, this is where you give me the big prize. I get the big present now. You're like, no. I was like, but I've been good, and now I get the ridiculous prize.
You were talking to the most nonplussed God I think I've ever come up with.
I was like, this, everything's set up. I inherit this. I get all of this. I get the world. I get their domain. I get everything. It's all mine. And you were like, no, go away, Violet. What's that name? Violet Beauregard?
Beauregard.
Yeah. I was very much being a Violet Beauregard.
She's my favorite of all the children, if that makes you feel better.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. I just immediately applied it to me and the Ransom the Dungeon Party, and it's like, yeah, I'll take that. What I heard is I'm your favorite. So whatever you said, I don't know.
Okay. Whatever makes you feel better. What about you, Ben? Would you turn around to the Homebrew Quest gang and go, gods, there you go?
I did.
Okay.
And I I made them ideals. Big spoilers for campaign 1, but if you haven't watched it now, maybe you won't. But it was a huge thing. It was like that. Actually, you know what? See how it plays out. If you are interested, it's in the end game of campaign 1. That was that sort of thing. We sort of got to a world-ending thing, and the only really way to solve it was sort of like full control. In fact, there is one episode where I definitely jumped the shark. I don't want to give it away, but for anyone who has watched, it's a moment in which I give them not only control over the world, but over my DM notes. And that was terrifying in a lot of ways. So they were allowed. But I thought it was kind of fun and it was interesting. And thankfully, I did kind of give over that amount of power, because towards the end of the campaign, my internet was really bad, as it was at the start of this show when we were kicking it off. And so I drop. So they finished the campaign without me. It was very much a kind of like, you no longer need me as your DM. Enjoy the world moment. But I I don't know. I've never been burnt by having to nerf something. So I think I'm still naive in the sense of giving your players too much power. And I think I also appreciate when I'm learning that limitations are actually just as fun as take the sword that does everything, do the thing that does. Like, I'm very much that DM who will give you everything you want and not even like, it's not cursed or anything. It's just that's it. You have it. Because I just think it's I just love seeing what people do with with items that are like, they'll come up with creative ways to use them. What I've learned now is to sort of make things more vague. So like, trying to think of an example. Iggy's slate, you could draw anything. So it's kind of like you have access to almost Looney Tunes powers. You can draw whatever you want and it will become reality, or you can use it in any way. And I did that for two reasons. Lucy was a new player to D&D, picked a bard, and there's like spell list there. And so between DM and player, I was kind of like, what if I give you something that like any spell can exist? And then it's sort of on me to like do the mental calculations of like what level that should be, or what the damage should be, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that worked quite well. And it took the pressure off Lucy from like figuring out exactly how a spell works, because there's nothing more disheartening than like, I cast the spell and you're like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. It's like this line that you missed in this huge description. You're like, oh no, it's like I do need to see that person, or like provide it out from those kind of things, which I understand why it's there for players who get the details, but for casual players, they don't need that kind of restriction. See, Master D is one of the Homebrew players in chat, and it's kind of fun pushing those boundaries, because I think you're expecting a DM to say no, and I was just like, keep going, see what you want, get what you have. But then I started kind of punishing them for it. So
I think you're the psycho.
I set them up as if I'm going to. Yeah, I did. I turned that into a thing where it's like, you're so strong and powerful. Just keep going. Yeah. Keep slaughtering your way through this fort, and no consequences will come of this.
See, iceberg.
Sorry, so long-winded way. But from the interview, to go back to Daniel, I think what I need to get better at, and what I really like, was that sense of a mix of magic and mystery. That gods, because they are all powerful, have this ability to be like, yeah, I could solve your problem, but why would I? I see, like, you couldn't possibly comprehend the level at which I exist. I often think about it in a way that, like, when we see, if we saw a little snail on the side of the road, we might just like pick it up and move it. And that snail's like, what the fuck is going on? It has no comprehension of our existence, and it's something small to us. And some gods could do that level of stuff. But yeah, I think I did a little bit in Homebrew where it was like, if I get involved, I operate at such a big level that I might accidentally destroy the world. So it's like, if I'm looking at all of time and I'm trying to nudge like a microsecond here, I might like smudge my finger in and like destroy the whole thing, like a toddler in a sand pit full of ants. So it's better that at a micro level, micro beings, players are, according to a god, deal with it.
Like, I always, sometimes when we kind of, a lot of these episodes, it always comes up with, start small and then go big, or, find the balance, talk to the players. I mean, those are like the three, not golden rules, but I think over the year that we've been doing this, Ben, these things keep coming up. And it is like, Zool says it in chat, I loved coming up with upon aspects of my goddess in the campaign, and I've told Daniel of some ideas of my character where she wants to incorporate the physical symbols of her goddess in her game, compass and maps. I expect opportunities to present themselves because I handed that to Daniel. Like, that's player and DM communicating. That's setting real expectations. That's looking at the full picture and going, hey, look, this isn't, just so we know, this isn't all going to be your thing, and so here we go, but I also would like this to be incorporated into it. And it does, it's starting at that point where everybody is on the same page, and nobody is kind of going, oh, I thought it. And Daniel says that as well with the god, that oh, you thought they were going to do X, Y. No, like, and I did you say it did you say it on camera, or did you say it when we were chatting before, where you were on about my gods, and you were like, "Oh God, Declan, every time your gods come down, we're like, no, we don't want any of your crap."
That was
Yes,
off
you did. You
camera.
said it off crap. Yeah, you
I
said it
didn't
off
say
camera.
it. Look, you're
No, I know, but like we were. He's so mean when the camera's not on.
No, I just said it's funny how like players are often like looking for gods and like, give us that thing, like help us out. And in romancing, it's one of those ones where it's like, I'm just trying to live my life. Stop involving me in your drama. Like, I don't want to be involved in this god war.
Yeah, it's I love that magic and mystery around them, and it like obviously Hadana is so prevalent in the story, the goddess of love, and those kind of who surround her. But there are just as many of these other gods, and we've seen them. How many of them have you actually spoken to?
Yeah, like across the campaign, like so few.
Yeah. They're peppered in as like little things, and we know, AJ reached out to Chaff a couple of times, like through prayer and stuff like that, but didn't pop down with AJ, my boy, how's it going? What you need? What did you lose? What can I find you? You want to plant a field? Let's do that. No, it's I love this idea that gods they're up there, they're big, they're all powerful, they're all whatever. They can't, like, that's a huge amount of responsibility. Like, this isn't just this is where I think I kind of deviate then from the ancient Greeks and their gods, where they were all set round supping on nectar and like eating pomegranates. Life was great, and they just set back, and they only got involved when people pissed them off. There was very little like come on down here and help me out. Very little of that, unless it was going to piss somebody else off or they'd been pissed off themselves. So I like the idea of gods in my world being, I am the god of magic, or I'm the goddess of death, or whatever it might be. I actually can't stop doing what I do, because I am the embodiment of this. I am its essence in this plane, in this realm, in this sense of reality. If I stop doing what I have to do the thing that you need me to do, which has literally nothing to do with me, everybody stops dying for that nanosecond, and that's going to have complications. So I always love the idea of, they're up there and they're doing these things, but they don't, they're on the clock, and they're on the clock constantly. So I think it does come down to that kind of managing the, I can't have God just pop down and like how does the dude, the level 3 halfling bard, converse with that?
It's a really tough challenge, because literally in the rule book there's like divine intervention, where if you roll a certain thing, it's like, they do intervene. Like there's a mechanic for it, which makes it almost impossible for us to be like, they're kind of they get involved, they don't get involved, because that suddenly sets a new behavior. So like, why do it for them or not? So I think the tone and theme and how you flavor your gods is really interesting, because I can imagine in a situation when playing with you, if that happened, if one of us was a cleric and we rolled and we managed to get like under the number we needed to, you wouldn't have them just like poof in and be like, how can I help? You'd be like, okay, what in the world would be under their influence that they could like assist with this?
That's the god of cats.
Just catting around. What I like is Seamaster D in chat mentions that in their world, since the gods couldn't agree on the world's creation, they formed a storyteller by adding a part of themselves, and this entity possessed a storybook that held the story of everyone, gods included. And I like that idea, that like,
that's beautiful.
There's something kind of written there, but then you're not saying that like, it's not what's that term? Predestination.
I'm listening.
I'll ramble. But it's not like predestination. It doesn't take away kind of free will. There's still dice. Oh, nice. Still, I see you just reached level 10, where you get divine intervention. But in a world where dice exist, in a world where gods are part of it, where anything can sort of happen, I like where you keep them a little bit more mysterious, and I think I noticed that really well. The thing I was gonna say is that, like, did I lose my train of thought? Have I lost my train of thought? Did I get distracted by fluff? Given that anything can happen from a dice perspective and that gods exist, I think the most interesting thing to do, and I might try to do this in other games, is I find worlds hard to buy into where, like, why doesn't everyone worship gods? If there are these all-powerful beings who keep getting involved in people's lives and offer boons, and like clerics clearly get cool spells that like wizards don't, and paladins clearly get abilities, it makes no sense that like a random farmer would be like, I guess I'll just stay here. It's like, oh, if I just go to the temple every day and I pray, I'll get sick powers. So thinking about your world and thinking about, like, how do I make it okay for agnostic people to exist? And that can only, I think, happen in a world where the gods aren't hands-on, or not evidently imposing their will on people. And so it's that balance, I think, is really nice, where it's like a world where the cleric believes, and the conflicting beliefs can happen. Zul pointed out in chat, it's like, well, I believe in life and I believe in death. It's like, it's funny, you don't think about gods in a fantasy setting as a belief system. It's an alignment to ideals. I know they're all there, but where I personally feel most aligned is here. And that's why I go this way. And I like, no, I won't. There's something you're doing, which I've heard wind of, which I quite like, but I won't say anymore. Which is a really nice. I'll tell you after. I'll tell you after.
What am I doing? I don't know what
Stay
I'm doing.
Stay tuned to Running Dungeon to get this in. If I look at our schedule, in about 8 months. So,
give or take.
Yeah.
So if I take two of the big stories that I was working with, Romancing the Dungeon is one, and then the other then would be kind of Beyond Horizon's Edge, Rise of the Forsaken, both kind of taking place in the same world. In Rise of the Forsaken, that's a full pantheon. It's done. There's X amount of gods, and then you have I love the idea of and it's kind of a little bit like you had with Hibernia, and like there was one, and then from one came many. I often saw it as colors, and that you have your prime colors, and when they mix, all these other things start to come out of that. And so I built this full pantheon, sort of designed a little on Greek stuff, designed a little bit on ancient Irish stuff, designed a little bit on Norse, and from that, I was like, okay, this is set. I had the temples, I had their symbols, I had their worshippers, I had kind of who is more hands-on, who is more involved, and who kind of stays aloof, sort of a thing. Good to go, ready to prime, religion checks all sorted. Good, we got it. It's established for the players coming into this world. And there's no other gods going to pop up. That's it. It's done. And then the world of Romancing the Dungeon only started with one. Two, technically. But we just got introduced to Hedona. And there was nothing else. And I had a warlock who, Hephaestus, whose pact was with an archfey. Hadn't even thought about it. I was like, Fae, that'll never come up in my game. And then suddenly it became this thing of, well, Declan, who's the god of death? And then it was suddenly, okay, I need something more than Hedona. I need to start thinking a bit about this tapestry. And then I'd mentioned, oh, well, there's the Temple of Brogue, god of charity. You've Finn, the god of death. There's Accolade, the goddess of competition and fair rules. The goddess Nan, healing and medicine and being comfortable. Chaff, so on and so forth. Gods in my world, in the world of Romancing Dungeon, in the world of Arcanum, there's a kind of a tiered system, I guess, really, because the gods that we are dealing with are some of them are older than than people believe them to be, or know them to be, and so you have these entities known as first ones, like the first gods, and they did not have names. They weren't called Hadana or Chaff. They weren't called Brogue or Nan. They were simply just one who takes care of love, one who finds missing things, one who knows all, one who tends to the night sky. All these sort of responsibilities. And I started thinking when I was coming up with the concept of the first ones that this necessity for people to believe in something, and that if enough people believe in it, that gives something power.
Mhm.
And from that, gods, goddesses can be born. That these beings who they're cosmic and they are primal, but they weren't there before people. They came after people because
Mhm.
people needed them to be there, and there was such a great need, and there was such a want and a requirement for them to exist, that will alone force these things to happen. And then quickly the tables turn. So it's like, oh well, God's going to do this, and God's going to do that, and my God will do
Mhm.
this. And it's funny. I've ended up doing the same thing as the DM and the person who's building that world. I don't create the god until I need them.
Mm.
And when I have a necessity, when I have a need, a requirement for who's the god of this, then I conjure that up because now there's a
Yeah.
need for this. And I love world building. I love creating a new space, kingdoms, continents, whole worlds, history, lore, all that stuff that goes with it. But there's something really, really refreshing about not knowing everything about the world and exploring it yourself, and not sandboxing yourself as the DM into, well, there's 4 gods, the god of fire, water, earth, and air, and they take care of everything else. And if you want to do that, do that.
Mm.
But I promise you, I have had an awful lot of fun down in the sand with my players who are like, hey, Declan, we need to talk to the god of whatever. Give me 2 minutes. I'm going to get a juice box.
It's like, let me just whip up that for you. Hey, what do I need? A little pinch of sass, a little cosmic power. Yeah.
Oh shit! I put in too much sass. But yeah, and like from that need, then creating the god that they
Yeah.
need to talk to, and then and then it's I oh god, I wish I could talk about that episode with the gym.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
where that can also kind of go wrong. So yeah, it's it gods, pantheons, and deities can be such a fun and interesting thing to bring to the table. But like we were saying before the interview, and again, Daniel's advice is such solid, grounded advice in that magic and mystery of it. They can very quickly overrun the story. They can very quickly overrun it. And I know C Master D mentioned and Zool mentioned, well, the paladin and the cleric can pull these things through. I love that. Like they can be kind of great ways to keep mechanically, narratively, but we have to stop to do that thing. But then you've everybody else going, yeah, but that's not my deal. It's just, I think it's just to be mindful of that.
There's something you were saying, and I think it's, instead of like what we normally do in the show is like we'll build on it or keep going on it. I think it's a lovely question for anyone watching to muse over until the next show. And that is thinking about, so what we talked about there is like, are gods born? So like, it's funny because you think about gods and pantheons as the creators of things, and then you take one step back and go, well, who created them? And in romancing, it's kind of answered. People created gods, and gods then started creating or capitalizing on that ideal. Seamaster D in chat mentions how for anyone in their world who doesn't believe in gods, the primals are there. So like, you might just reach out and the wind might help you. So there's something before that. And I think it's a really interesting question to ask yourselves as world builders and DMs. was the world there first, or was the Pantheon there first? And a build on that is it a glass ceiling? Is ascension possible? And the two answers to that will inherently have story in them. A world without gods, where gods were needed and burst into existence, which implies ascension in some sense, or at least the possibility of it. And a world where the gods existed and then built the world, and how they might actually view the thing they've created differently to a pantheon that was created by a thing. So it's that sense of like, with this, like that sense of this is mine. Not to get into any sort of real world stuff, but I've always had a problem with like a monotheistic sense for that. It's like, I made this. I'm like, okay, all right, Jill. Like, great.
You can look, but don't touch.
But there's that sense of like, what is that kind of godlike personality wise? And why did they stop, or did they stop after they created and created and created and created? And what was before then? And you don't even have to answer. That's not, you know, you can decide. We don't care. I mean, I drew a map for Hibernia and I just like shaded out a part. And the player's like, "What's over there?" It's like, doesn't matter. I just forgot to draw it as an island. So that's you're never going there. That's the Shadowlands.
Oh,
yeah, you really want to go there. I was like, that's nothing but death and monsters over this way. But yeah, think about as you're world building. Think about the difference that approach takes, and how that will shape the personality of them, and the type of what they're like as a god. Maybe one of the reasons they're not all that interventionist is because, you know, like DMs with too many campaigns, it's like, yeah, you're 5 campaigns ago. I don't care about you anymore, and you've been abandoned by your pantheon. So yeah, I think that's a nice musing for me. That's me done for today's episode.
I'm not going to follow that up with anything, because I genuinely, all I would say is, like everything at the table, talk about it first. Sit down with the players and go, hey, look, because sometimes GMs spend a lot of time creating that world, creating that pantheon, creating those gods, and then we don't get to, you know, we're not interested. You're like, oh, okay, but there's this whole thing behind it. Like, do your DM a favor. Ask questions about the world. Ask questions about that temple that they've mentioned is just outside the city gates. Well, why is it outside the city gates and not inside? What's the point of that? I promise you, there's a story in it, and I know sometimes there is this. Well, we need to get into the story. We need to get into the. Yeah, but trust me. There is something in those little moments, and the DM will have put a little bit of themselves into that story. And I always appreciate it when a player, through their character, will often go, "Oh, hey, can we do this thing?" And I think, like, I've had some really wonderful moments, small moments. AJ leaving kind of little crumbs in a corner of the room for chaff. Ivan in a cave finding some letters carved in stone. All of these things are, all of these little moments mean an awful lot, because I get to revel in them as much as the players get to revel in them. So your DM gets to revel, and if they've put the time into it, they want to revel in it with you. So ask questions about the world, ask questions about God, and have fun with it. Ben, you said you had a hard out at 8:45.
Yes, yeah.
I hate to alarm you, but you were 16 minutes late for your hard out.
I know. Yeah. But I feel like we're wrapping up, and this is pretty.
Yes,
good.
we are. Yeah,
I won't be too late. I was just having a quick look on my channel side to see if there's anyone raid to be, but you might see some raiders.
I think. Will you vamp for 2 seconds? And
yes, we will. Of course, be back in 2 weeks' time. Topic I don't know if we've landed on yet. So if you have a topic that you want us to discuss, just hop over to the Discord, where we will literally spend time talking about anything. A lot of our conversations tend to wrap around D&D. It's the biggest sort of TTRPG out there, so it's our main reference point for people. But if there's other systems that you think we should check out, we should talk about Monster of the Week, and because you'll be 3-4 sessions in, And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, over on this very channel, as I called it, Murderville, Tennessee. I was like, what's the name of the new show? Murderville, Tennessee? And Declan was like, that's so far off. Mark it's the name of the show. And you can watch it here on Monday nights, every second Monday, I believe. In 1 week's time, TTRPG Trials will be playing Goblin Errands. And that's a very exciting, fun system where you're a goblin on an errand. You're an errant goblin running errands. And I will be, on that very same day, but you won't see it, interviewing the creator of the system. So stay tuned for that. We'll get a little snippet of the interview here on this show, and then I believe the full interview are on TTRPG Trials when that episode comes out. So there's plenty of stuff to come. Yeah, if you do have any ideas, if you do have a DM, like we said, that's sort of the outtake from today's episode. We want to interview your DMs, so send them our way, and we'll happily sit down and have a chat about what they bring to the table that makes them so special. Because every DM is special in their own way.
Oh, we're almost good to raid.
Yeah. Let's hit it.
We're back in 2 weeks. We will see you then.